Beware, lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ.
Hear ye the word which the Lord speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, Learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workman with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. They are upright as the palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be borne, because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil. Neither also is it in them to do good. He that is so impoverished that he hath no oblation chooseth a tree that will not rot.
They rot and they smell like cheese.
To prepare a graven image that shall not be moved.
This warning is coming to God's people a half a century, almost 500 years before the birth of Christ. We're being told to stay away from this. So it have nothing to do with Christ. Well, there was a Babylonian legend that Nimrod's spirit, after Nimrod died, that a pine tree grew over his grave. And Semiramis, his mother/wife, claimed that the spirit of Nimrod is in the earth. And it's a miracle. It's a spiritual phenomenon that he's shown his presence through what? And a living obelisk, which is a man's personal member. Right? So a tree erected out. That's the earth being of a woman, and the tree coming out of the earth is representing a man's phallics, or a man's private part, because she was the goddess of fertility. So in celebration of this sign from the dead, they decreed that the Israelites who were conquered in Babylon had to pay homage to the spirit of Nimrod each year and give gold and silver, and was taxed by the Babylonians this time of year. And God said, you know what? Don't be afraid of them, because there's nothing in this tree. The tree is a lie, and the people that are pushing these customs are lies. Now that's the history. All right. When you look at a book called The Two Babylons, it goes into some of those histories, some of the history, along with serious references. Serious references. Okay. It's called The Two Babylons. Get that book.
Stay yourselves and wonder. Cry ye out and cry. They are drunken, but not with wine. They stagger, but not with strong drink. For the Lord hath poured out upon you the spirit of deep sleep, and hath closed your eyes. The prophets and your rulers, the seers, hath he covered.
Ye hypocrites, well did Esaias prophesy of you, saying, This people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoureth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men.
This is from a book titled The Great Ages of Man, Byzantium. It says here on page 16, unlike the Jews who abhorred Gentiles and held themselves aloof from the Gentile world, Christians reached out into that world, starting as groups of local communicants who gathered to commemorate the Last Supper and who were loosely bound by a belief in the imminent second coming of Christ. The Christians gradually took on some of the administrative patterns of the Roman state and created an efficient religious organization of their own. So slowly, almost imperceptibly, the new Christian church developed its own ritual and doctrine, assimilating much from the religious or religions and philosophies of the very peoples of the empire. Its leading thinkers and intellectuals, Irenaeus, Origen, Clement of Alexandria, took over the language and many of the ideas of Greek philosophy. Many of its customs and services were based on the Judaic forms, but Christians also adopted rituals, even dates from pagan religions. The date of Christmas, for example, was pegged at the 25th of December to compete with the Mithraic festival day, although the exact date of Christ's birth was not and is not known. Thus, Christianity added it to its other strengths, a universal appeal, but the 3rd century, it was well on its way to becoming the most powerful single force within the empire, capable of infusing new life into Rome's failing governmental structure and the weakening tradition of classical learning.
So the Romans were losing their spiritual, I would say, force over the pagans, because a lot of them were they were getting converted. They were coming out of paganism. So in order for the Romans to re-energize their paganism, they instituted or did what you would call a compromise and used Christ to stimulate their pagan base again. They say, well, hold up, the pagans are leaving us. They're following Christ. But if we bring Christ as the head of our paganism, not only will we keep our pagans, we'll absorb the Jews and the Israelites also into our paganism. Many shall come in my name and say that I am Christ, like Christ mentioned, the first sign in Matthew 24. Many shall come in my name saying I am Christ, and shall deceive many. Christ, when Paul was teaching in the churches, he was pulling even Gentiles out of paganism. See, the Romans were losing. So after we fell, there was no one to uphold the statutes, the judgments, the words, the ministry of Christ. Now, many fought. Even there's an argument during the time of Polycarp, where the 7 churches of Christ were actually cut off from the Romans' communication. They didn't even want to deal with the 7 churches that Christ set up, because Christ's church didn't compromise with paganism. Okay? So what did they do? Eventually, through time, when we weren't there to defend Christ, we began to fall. There was no one left. Judea fell. They took Christ's name and labeled his name over all of their paganism, their Satan worships. They camouflaged Satan with Christ.
I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils, and not to God. And I would not that ye should have fellowship with devils. Ye cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. Ye cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and of the table of devils. Do we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he?
They sacrifice to devils. Gentiles is synonymous with heathens. Heathens are synonymous with pagans. And let me make it clear. I'm not a Gentile. Okay? Make that clear.
I am the Lord. That is my name. And my glory will I not give to another, neither my praise to graven images.
I'm repping and gathering a Christ church. In con, we guilty for gathering a Christ first. Thousands of videos, don't know if you've seen them. We believe you shot. Here's the way to receiving the kingdom. Our high is the name he gave to Moses when he freed him. The spirit of love is what we bring in. We promote to live peaceably with all men. In the spirit of a Mashiach, man, we all in. Trying to figure out who's truly in Israelite. Following Christ, we know Israel light. Operating through the spirit, one reason I'm filled with life. So to further my chances, rolling with paradise. And they praying for our elders to fall. All praises to the Most High for Elder Ricard, the ball, lawyer, God, deacon, shout.